But let's start just a mile or so down the road at Stamford Bridge, because Chelsea, it's Arsenal. I've given Pochettino a lot of passes because he's had a lot of people injured, weird stuff going on, whatever. And they go into this game against Arsenal, and things work out for Chelsea. But what I can't work out, at least work out for a while for Chelsea, is were Arsenal really bad in that first half? Or did Chelsea make them look bad? Because Enzo Fernandez is actually playing where he should be playing.
Yeah, and Caicedo, both I think, Gab, the two surely linked in the sense that this was one of the worst first half we've seen since Mikel Arteta took over the club, and that's 143 games, I think. That was the 143rd, and I think only 3 or 4 times before they only had 2 shots. Like their XG in the first half was 0.12. There was just nothing.
I think Chelsea had 3 shots in that first half. So by the way, it's not
much more. But at least they were there. They won all the duels, all the ball. They were far more aggressive. They played with a lot of intensity. Arsenal had a lot of bad passes, bad touches everywhere. There was just no rhythm to Arsenal's game. There was a lot of rhythm, I thought, to this Chelsea side, and I think the jury is still out on Pochettino in terms of what he can do with this team. Even now with 3 games unbeaten, 2 wins, 1 draw, etc. But what they have is when they play with that intensity and that energy, Gallagher, Caicedo, Enzo, but even Sterling, Palmer, the runs, the running, Mudryk, of course, all of that, then I think they become hard to play against. They're not amazing, certainly not with the ball, but I think it's hard to play. However, as soon as they drop a bit of that intensity against a team like Arsenal, who are a better team than them, then you see that it's a bit more difficult for them. And I just don't think right now they can play on that high intensity level for a whole 90 minutes in a game like this.
Why not? Should they be rested? There's no European football. I
know, but it's still hard, man.
I know. I did kind of feel that Cole Palmer, so you have an extra midfielder. By the way, there's none of this false 9 nonsense, right? You had Cole Palmer and Gallagher ahead of Caicedo and Enzo, right? That was the basic setup. It did allow them not just to do well in terms of intensity, but also kind of put the lid on Arsenal's midfield. Equally, you can make the point that, and I think this applies to the whole game. Chelsea's goals were a penalty that was gifted to them by Saliba. The other one, a Mudryk one, where it's not really clear if he meant it or not.
Please. We're clear, right? It's a cross. 100%.
Pochettino says 100% he meant it, and he says he practices it all the time.
Of course.
But then equally, Arsenal's goal, one, Sanchez goes walkabout, right? Doesn't realize, oh, look, Declan Rice is a professional footballer. He might actually shoot from there. And then Malo Gusto falling asleep at the far post.
Yeah, which is what Malo Gusto does.
So it was an entertaining game. I was there. I don't quite follow it.
It was not highest quality, was it?
No, very low quality. Again, bad weather as well, all you want. But let's go back to one of my favorite issues. David Raya, Aaron Ramsdale. Do we have an issue here?
So what, for the ball that he lost to Palmer that should have scored? Or what? Or the Mudryk goal? I know he's a bit high on the Mudryk goal. He's really close to his near post as well. I'm not so sure about that. I just think it's a fluke from Mudryk. It goes in. It could have lobbed the law of the goalkeeper. We saw Murphy scoring the same goal for Newcastle pretty much against Palace on Saturday as well.
Okay, what I question is, does David Raya's passing, which I'm assuming is the only reason he plays, does it add that much value to Arsenal's build-up?
I think so.
No, I know he thinks so.
Against City, okay, there was a couple of times, one that Alvarez blocked. He plays long with accuracy, which I think is what Arteta really likes.
Sure, great. But on the flip side, you have a guy where I think at some point, I don't know. But again, I go back to my original point. If you want to pick Raya, that's fine. But please don't tell us, oh no, I'm picking them based on the opponent. And one time it might be Raya, maybe Ramsdale will come on as a sub in some games. Just come on. We know better than that. Other thing, I miss this in real time because you're there, you don't get the benefit of the replay. Watching it again, Arsenal should have had a penalty when Sanchez cleared out Gabriel Jesus. I mean, this was like Onana against Wolves proportions. Yeah?
Except that against Wolves, Kalacic gets actually the ball, and then Onana just clatters him. In this one, Gabriel Jesus is nowhere near the ball, but still he gets clattered. This is a foul everywhere else on the pitch. It should be a foul in the box as well.
You're not allowed to go and clatter and squash an opponent like a little cream puff. All right, Jules, we should point out The Arsenal are top of the league for now as we record this on a Monday morning. Ahead of Spurs, obviously, are playing Fulham on a Monday night.
Yeah. Still unbeaten.
Spurs, yes.
And
Spurs
Arsenal.
are still Arsenal. Yeah, okay, fine.
They're still unbeaten. It's
Really?
9 games in the season.
Did I dream that game against Lens? That was a different
No,
team?
in the league, they're unbeaten in the league.
So what? That doesn't count?
But in the league, they're unbeaten. No,
Okay.
they haven't lost a game in the league.
Mm-hmm.
City have lost games. Liverpool have lost games.
Okay.
Chelsea have lost games.
How many have Spurs lost?
Yeah,
Ooh,
Spurs are
see?
still unbeaten
Respect
too.
for Big Ange.
But like, how
Sorry,
can like?
I had to
Is it
shoehorn-
weird for them? What
We don't talk
like the
about
fact-
Spurs on the show because they're playing tonight, so I needed to give them
Okay,
a mention
yeah,
and
fair enough.
remind me. Yeah, otherwise, my Spurs fans would get on to me. All right. What strikes me about this, and you're right, they're right up there. I think right now they're really far, really, really far from where they could be. And there are mitigating circumstances. Obviously, Saka's injury, Martinelli also missed time. Then there's others who I don't think are on their level. Like I look at this game today and I saw, all right, he started Georgie in midfield.
Yeah.
Didn't necessarily have a great game. Maybe he did it. He wanted an extra passer, I assume, away from home, London derby. But if it's not Georgie, it's Havertz, who obviously has had issues too. Havertz coming on later.
Yeah.
That hasn't popped yet. Zinchenko, I thought, had a really poor first half, came off at halftime.
Yeah, it was on the yellow as well.
So what I'm wondering, so then I asked myself, okay, so Arsenal can get better when everybody's
should
fit
get better.
and clicking and fine. But then I look at this and I really wonder, are they going to get better, or is he so fixated on certain things? I'll give you an example.
Mm-hmm.
Zinchenko, who is an attacking midfielder playing left back, are very comfortable moving into midfield when they're on the ball, doing that whole thing with the fullback, right? He goes off at halftime, bring on Tomoyasu, and you ask Tomoyasu to do the same thing. Now, Tomoyasu is a center back who can play fullback, mostly right back.
Yeah.
Now he's playing left back, and you ask him to play in the middle. He's not Beckenbauer. I don't think Tomiyasu's ever been asked to.
But you don't have to be Beckenbauer to play in that position. Sometimes it's to have another body there, especially when you lose the ball. And for that, he could be good there. You don't always have your fullback coming inside to be the creative touch like Zinchenko is. You can have a different profile of a fullback coming inside as well.
Right.
Stones is not Beckenbauer either. He's
Yeah,
probably better
Stones
technically
is a
than
much
Tomiyasu.
better passer than Tomiyasu.
But still, it's still not Beckenbauer.
I know. I think this is not putting somebody in their best condition, because you know what, you can say, oh, he doesn't have to be Beckenbauer, he just has to be there. You counter press when you lose the ball, you have an extra body there, an extra filter. This is fine, but at what expense? You know, you want to put players in the position where they can, I think, where they can affect the game the most, rather than having your system. And to me, this felt a little bit
maybe.
like putting the system first.
But then the second half is the better half from Arsenal with Tomiyasu there, no Zinchenko.
Yeah, I don't think because of Tomoyasu.
Maybe
Well, it's also because Zinchenko was really bad in the first half.
True.
The other thing I don't get is we've seen, I think Georgie started with the last two games. Is that?
Yeah, City. So yeah, it was the same midfield against City.
So obviously when Jorginho's in midfield, it's a very different vibe, setup and everything than when Havertz or Fabio Vieira are there.
yeah, because Rice doesn't play the same position.
So then you're asking Rice but Rice also doesn't do what Havertz does. I mean, he's further up. It is more of he's closer to the line where Odegaard is, but it still changes everything, right? You don't have the physical presence in front of the back four, because if Rice moves up and whatever. And so I'm thinking like, okay, so now again, you'll change your system there a little bit, and you're certainly changing personnel, and it's affecting you. But then you won't do it in other situations. I don't follow this.
I think Partey's injury. I think ideally he would play Partey in a game like this and Rice in midfield with other guards, and not Jorginho. And
Or the guy he spent 80 million on, the best on earth.
Yeah, but again, you can understand what
Yeah.
this is, and that would have been a special game, I think, for Havertz to start away at Stamford Bridge, in those conditions. But maybe he should have started him. I don't know, and I don't know if Havertz is going to work as a number 8 or not. I just think that they will improve collectively and individually as well. There's players who haven't hit the height yet, like a Martinelli, for example, or your your best friend Gabriel Jesus, who you love so dearly. You know, their best form compared to at times the form that they had last season, where Arsenal were better. But if you look at the same fixtures last season, and it's pointless. I know I'm contradicting myself. It's pointless. But if you still do it, I think they have as many points against those 9 teams than they did last season, albeit they haven't lost this year compared to last year where they had lost. So it's not bad. I still think it's a decent / good start of the season from them. But they will have to improve if they want to win the league, because it might not be enough if they keep playing like this.
And here's my thing: is I wonder what that path to improvement is. So because
individually and collectively.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, but I think some players I think have an obvious ceiling. The more I see Eddie Nketiah, the more I think this man has a ceiling. Right?
Yeah, but look, he came on for 20 minutes and he shook that defense. He could have scored a great goal. He ran in behind like that.
And the more I see Gabriel Jesus, again, you
never really liked him.
No. I like what he does, but it seems to me, I wonder to some degree, we've gone peak meta, and the center has just collapsed because of all the things Gabriel Jesus does off the ball when he's not in possession, his movement, his runs, his pressing, blah 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 blah, which Pep loved so much until he decided, I love it, but I don't love it to the tune of giving you a new long-term contract.
Yeah.
This trumps the other thing, which is what you actually do with the ball. And look, I'm not saying Gabriel Jesus is a poor footballer.
No.
I'm just saying, I think if you look at the top 20 teams in Europe, you look at who their center forwards are and what they provide when you're in possession, I think you're going to find most of them are going to be well ahead of what Gabriel Jesus gives you with the ball. And for a team that has so many passers, from Odegaard to Saka, people who deliver service, I think at some point, it comes back to bite you.
Maybe.
Maybe he should play wide more often. I don't know. Maybe you rotate him, Martinelli, and Saka. Well, Saka, I think, should probably always play. Maybe you rework it and you do a front two, something. But
maybe, yeah.
I just think the scoring load, and I know Odegaard scores a lot, and Havertz potentially can. Well, not so much.
And Trossard and Saka and Martinelli, and maybe that's what Arteta wants in terms of balance. Instead of a 130 goal a season striker who doesn't move out of the box.
I just think there is a rigidity, rigidity and belief in your ideas, right, are two sides of the same coin, right? It goes back to the old Pep. Well, plan B is to do plan A better, right? I just wonder if, there's a window of opportunity that Arsenal have, I think now, because it's a young team and so on, to go and keep growing and really challenge City.
Yeah.
And I think it's still open. I think they can challenge City this year. And Spurs and Liverpool. Let's give credit because they're all right there. Yeah. I'm just wondering if maybe you shouldn't become a little bit more pragmatic in your approach at this stage.
Maybe.
But
I thought his subs were spot on again. I think only Newcastle and Brighton this season, their subs have had more involvement in goals in the Premier League, which shows that coming off the bench, which is something that Arsenal didn't really have last season, certainly not as much. And remember last season we kept saying he plays the same 11, it's always the same 11. The same players that have to be
have
decisive.
More depth, yes.
And I think that's good. And you were not too keen on Pochettino subs in this game. I don't understand why Nico Jackson comes on, and for me that's a turning point in the game, because that box that you rightly described before was gone, and suddenly you had a focal point, and it was much easier for Arsenal to defend against and to actually go and press, because you kind of knew what Chelsea were going to do.
I think the thinking...
Reece James made no sense whatsoever.
We'll get to Reece James in a minute. But
yeah.
I think the Nico Jackson thing was a case of, okay, Arsenal are chasing the game. Let's have an outlet, because let's face it, Cole Palmer did well, but this was a central midfielder. There's two central midfielders, him and Gallagher, next to each other, disrupting things, right?
Yeah.
At that point in the game, you wanted to have the outlet, you wanted to have the pace, right?
Yeah.
It's a wet pitch. Your pacey players are Sterling, who obviously you wanted to take off at some point because he's getting more tired, and Mudryk, who is a roll of the dice. And so he sends on Madueke to give you that directness, and Jackson.
Later, Madueke than Jackson.
Sorry?
Madueke much later than Jackson.
Right. But I'm saying that was, and again, you could argue whether he should have come on before. But I think this was the idea. This is what he was trying to do. And Jackson had that chance one-on-one.
Okay, he had. But...
And look, at least Jackson didn't get booked this game.
Yeah, you're right. So in your match between his goals and yellow cards,
it's leveling up. That was a terrible touch. You can look at both ways. There was a terrible touch, which Raya got to, right? Or as my friend put it, he passed the ball to Raya. Equally, though, he got himself in that position.
Yeah,
right. So if he scores a goal, then we're saying, "Oh, Poch, how smart," with Jackson's directness. That's it. I still don't know. I still don't know where you go this season with Jackson as your main center forward.
You don't. In January, they're going to sign.
A couple years down the road, and 100%. So the great Armando experiment is over as well. You're going to think right off there?
I don't know. I just don't know if he's good enough really to take this team back to the top. But again, same with Nkunku. Where is it going to Nkunku play? Well, you can't play Cole Palmer, Gallagher, and Nkunku. Well, no, you can. And Sterling and Nkunku all together?
Well, no. I think one out of Palmer or Gallagher misses out when Nkunku's back. I think that's pretty obvious.
Where do you stand on the penalty? I'll tell you what I liked. That a big star like Sterling wants to take the pen, I can understand. Usually players like him would take penalties in a team. I think players like that would always try to get the penalty, right? Even if Cole Palmer is the penalty taker, he scored the game before in the Premier League on the penalty. What I love the most about this whole little scene was that Enzo Fernandez, who hasn't even been in this country for a year, at Chelsea for a year, whose English probably you would think is okay-ish, just about. He's the one, and he's only 22 years old, step in and say, no. And said to Sterling, hey, give him the ball, it's his. And then Sterling looks at him saying like, what? Did you really say what I think you said? And Enzo goes again, yeah, it's his ball, it's his pen. And I love that. And I love Enzo. I've always done. He's a leader in that team and they need him, especially when, like you said before, he played in the right position. But I just love that,
You'd almost think that Enzo and the manager come from the same country and the manager gave very clear rules and, Raheem Sterling maybe wanted to test that a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, by the way, if it had turned into a dispute, I would assumed Thiago Silva comes up from the back and says, guys,
but he didn't.
You know who I am? My name is Thiago Silva.
But he didn't. Enzo
behave.
Enzo did.
I know. But you had Thiago in reserve to sort that out.
But still.
And I thought Palmer did fine. I think Palmer, I don't dislike him, but I think it's a massive transition going from a team where you're surrounded by all these players who are far better than you, players where you can give a bad pass and they're going to be able to control it, players who are going to anticipate the movements all the time, and coming into this game in those conditions with these players around him who are still very much trying to find themselves.
Yeah, and we will know because this was the first game of a horrendous fixture list now for Chelsea where they would play City and Spurs and maybe United and Brighton or I don't know.
And Brentford.
I think it's Newcastle. It's like the 5 games coming up are huge.
The other thing on the substitutions, and again, when you're there, you kind of view the game a little differently. But so Reece James is fit again. There was some talk that he'd be ready to start against Arsenal. I understand why he didn't start. You don't want to make it your first start. But at some point, he sends Reece James on.
Yeah, 84th minute.
And he sends Reece James on for one of the midfielders, right? And I assumed, he's going to go to a back three. Mm-hmm. Reece James has played it before. Maybe it makes sense, less up and down, your first game back. Malo Gusto is going to stay where he is, wide. Instead, I don't know what you would call the position he played. He sort of played like right-sided midfield of some kind.
Like that, yeah.
Where he was hardly involved. I think he had 2 touches, maybe three touches.
4 passes I think he made in total.
It left Malo Gusto defending the far post, which guess what? I don't know what happened with this guy or, if he had something in his eye, but he completely loses Trossard. Trossard, I know, has got that little invisibility superpower sometimes.
But that's what Malo Gusto does, Defensively, sometimes it's shaky.
You can't concede a goal like that at the far post. You
No,
simply
definitely
cannot.
not. Definitely not.
And
Not that time in the game, certainly.
I can deal with people making mistakes because they're being positive and attacking. I can't deal with people making mistakes.
That's
or,
a basic
taking
defense. Like it's a basic defender skill to see that and to defend that.
You should know where your center backs are, and you should know where Reece James is, right?
Yeah, and Trossard.
And you should know above all where Trossard. I don't know. There's a lot of talking points. I think there's a long way for both these teams to go. Arsenal starting at a higher level, a much higher level, of
course,
obviously, than Chelsea right now. It's a longer rebuild, whatever. But I'll be curious to know what Poch does next. Is he going to become enamored of this strikerless system? The other thing, sorry, on the Mudryk one, you're 100% certain he didn't mean it.
Oh, come on.
Right. Okay, all right. So
I don't even think there's a debate. What is the debate? You could see where he looks. You can see his body. You could just see everything. But good for him. He went in. You take all those goals.
Pochettino says he practices this in training all the time.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, Lamine Camara, who scored a 58-meter lob against Monaco, said he practiced it all the time too. Come on.